Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and apologies again for the delay, but we are very glad to be getting down to the closing plenary of the World Data Forum. My name is Rajesh Merchandani. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the UN Foundation, and as you can see, we have a stellar panel for you this afternoon. Now, this session will run in two parts. In this first part, we'll hear from some of the different data communities that bring their own important perspectives to the discussion of how to advance the Cape Town Global Action Plan and improve data for development. What do they think have been the key learnings from the forum? What's been achieved? What still remains unresolved? And then later on in this panel, we'll also ask our panelists for the sectors and the organizations they represent, so what are you going to be doing differently as a result of this forum? And then in the second part of the closing plenary, we'll be hearing some announcements and some commitments from some of the key players and major speakers here in Dubai this week. Let me introduce my panelists for you. Going down from my left, Nena Wakama is the Policy Director for the World Wide Web Foundation. Next to her is Sophie Habram, who's a Policy Specialist for the Swedish Development Agency, SIDA. George McCarthy is the President and CEO of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, a think tank focused on land use issues. Francesca Perucci is from the UN Statistical Division. Many of you know her already. And Zachary Mwangi is from the Kenya National Board of Statistics. And, is that right?
Bureau of Statistics.
Bureau, apologies. Zachary Mwangi from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and also here in his capacity as chair of the UN Statistical Commission. Panelists, great to have you. Welcome very much. So thinking about what you feel, what your main takeaways are, what has this forum achieved, what's left unresolved? Nena Wakama, let me start with you. From the perspective of civil society, how has this forum now altered or evolved or enhanced your understanding of the future role of civil society? What are you taking away from it? What do you think of the achievements? What do you think of the gaps?
Thanks for having me again. I can confirm this is my last panel with you. No. I think there's TA700.
Nothing is confirmed,
No, there's a TS7. Trust me, it's shopping Dubai. Leave no dirham behind. Okay. Right, now I've got your attention. I can speak to one or two points. From civil society, from someone who comes from the World Wide Web, the first thing I take away is that there are actually some nice statisticians. Statisticians are not monsters. Between Cape Town and today, we've seen a lot of collaboration, off-site and on-site. So I want to salute the national statisticians, career statisticians, economists who have been reaching out to the civil society. In Africa, across the world, I have seen improved cross-stakeholder collaboration, and I want to salute that. That's my first takeaway. I could not stop on the gender thing. Between Cape Town and Dubai, I have seen that participation in speaker roles have increased for women. Yesterday, it was 58% male and 42% women, which has increased a bit. And I'm hoping that by the time we get to Bern, it will be 50-50, not just in speaker roles, but in participation generally. So I note those two. If you're wearing a badge, the forum badge, it was made by the World Wide Web Foundation because we wanted to add color, and those small stickers. At 1 month to this event, we are at 1,500. And we said, okay, let's make 1,500 badges. By the time we get here, we had more than 2,000. So I think that is to say that there is love, there is engagement, there is interest in this. And I want to think that is an achievement, that there is increase in participation. In Cape Town, I thought I saw many Africans. And my thinking was that, oh, this is in Africa, so people could walk over or could swim over to the mother city. But in Dubai, I still see that the participation data shows that a high percentage of participants are from Africa, identify as African. And that, I think, is very, very important and should be noted. Now, where are the gaps? I don't know if other people had the same problem with me of funding participation. There are some speakers, there are some very important people who could have been here who were not here because there is still some gaps in the funding of participation itself. And so some speakers had to be changed last minute. And I think we might want to work more on that. Last forum, we requested for participation at the highest level. But I want to salute Kenya. Ambassador Kennedy Osinde is here, who is the Chief of Staff at the Office of the Vice President. And I think apart from the UAE, he is the highest ranking government official in this place. I want to salute Kenya for that. But I say, okay, Kenya, asante sana. That is to say that we still have work to do in that area. We don't have enough ministers. We don't have participation at that level. Almost half of the participants are still statisticians. Identify as statisticians. You are nice people, you are open people, but I think the forum, why we're here is that we should move beyond the statistician field. We should move to other data communities. And I think we should be moving towards the younger generation. I'm looking at people here. I don't want to say middle-aged white male, but I want to say people who will be retiring in 10 years. So when we retire, we have to hand over.
Don't look at me.
Your hair is not black, I'm just saying. Okay. So the thing is, we need to reach out to the younger generation, people who will handle this in 10, 15 years' time. They need to be coming to this forum at this time to be able to see, to speak, to be challenged, to ask questions, and so that the handover will not be abrupt. I personally need to hand over to younger women. I'm looking at students. I would like to see more of those people. I want to be questioned. I want to be audited by the younger generation. I want to be able to transmit what I've learned so that in 5, 10 years, these people will be here. I will stop so far.
So, Nana, that was I think you gave us a really good kind of summary and description of your takeaways of sort of the metadata of the forum. What I'm also hoping that panelists will do is talk about what are the issues that you think have been resolved here, or what are the issues that remain unresolved in the kind of data ecosystem? And then Nana, maybe once everyone else has spoken, we may come back to you for some of your thoughts on that. So, Sophie Habram from CEDA, what do you think donor countries are taking away from this in terms of the kind of substantive discussions that have been going on here?
So thank you. I would actually first would like to start for inviting me to join this panel, and I think I bring a bit of the donor perspective here. And in one sense, I think that could also be seen kind of an outside perspective for many. But I very much, after this is my second UN World Data Forum, and I think after this UN World Data Forum, definitely I feel like I'm a part of this community, and I think that is an important take to be a part of this community, to engage with the donor community as well, that we're one group moving forward to something.
Do you think that's been achieved at this forum, that the donor community now?
No, I was speaking of myself personally.
Right, okay,
I don't think we're there, no, but I think that that's definitely something we need to go and move forward to. And I think that it's good that the donors are here and evolve. I'm not saying everyone is, but I was speaking from a personal note. And I think my perspective and my takeaway from this UN World Data Forum is very much of a donor view, and perhaps a more overarching view of my takes. And I think we all see and agree that the 2030 agenda, and particularly, the global goals, we see the urgent need for more and better data. And that means, from a donor perspective, that we need to work on strengthening the statistical capacity of countries. And I actually want to echo Johannes Jutting from the Paris 21. I was in a session on Monday where he said, currently providers do not match the needs of capacity development. We need new approaches. So that's basically my first take from the UN World Data Forum, that there is a global need to rethink how we work with capacity development. So I've been following a lot the discussions that's been on capacity development, but I think there's been a pretty clear saying or statement on what specific areas that needs to be improved. It's about partnerships and coordinations, it's about communication, it's about management. And that's basically summing it up what is needed. And when it comes to the case of Sweden, so we've been supporting capacity development. We have a long history of working together with our partner countries, where SIDA, as an aid agency, we give support to Statistics Sweden, as they are the experts in the field. So we rely on their expertise to engage with the partner country NSOs. And the focus there is on long-term institutional support, acknowledging that change takes time. So in that sense, the partner countries has the ownership in terms of the funds provided. And I think that is another take. I kind of want to summarize my lessons learned from this UN World Data Forum, seeing that in order for capacity development to be sustainable, it is important that the ownership of the support lies in our partner countries and the agencies' hand. So that is something I think we've discussed at several sessions I've attended. So I also want to stress that. And I think it's from a Swedish perspective, another take I want to raise is that it's not only about statistical production skills, it's about integrating other skills on management, on ICT, and basically providing an infrastructure to produce statistics in the future. That's another thing that we've been raised. It's not only about the statistics, it's also about communicating that statistics, that I think is an important lesson learned. And I just want to end by saying of my takes from this, and I mean, sure, I am here as a donor agency, so I hear you, money is needed.
Yes, I can have one right now.
Okay, Sophie Habram, thank you very much. George McCarthy from the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Amongst other things, your organization advocates for data as a public good. So what are your takeaways from the forum? What new initiatives or ideas have you learned about here that you think can advance that? What's not been said or what hasn't happened that you would have liked to see?
So once again, thanks for inviting me to this panel, and it's really been a pleasure to be here over the last couple of days. It's been quite illuminating. I think the biggest takeaway I have is one that's on the promise and the potential pitfalls of big data. And I'm really impressed by the availability now of some interesting new data sets provided by the space agencies and others that give us an entirely different view of the world from the sky. And I think it's going to offer us interesting possibilities for telling a new story about people and place. And it's also going to allow us, if we're able to do it, to kind of marry the story from the ground up to the story from the sky down, if we have the data from the ground up. And one of the things that we'll be able to do if we're able to kind of marry those two sources of data is really kind of get new insights into the habits and the behavior of people and places in a really nuanced way. But I'm also cautious, and the pitfalls that I worry about are really twofold. One is a methodological challenge, and not so much with the data provided by the space agencies, but the other big data that everybody's holding, looking to have such high promise. One of the big challenges I think that we have to really grapple with, and I didn't really hear much about it here at this conference, is that our statistical methods were really built on a very different model of inference, where we're able to generate randomized samples, we're able to do inference using the rules of statistics based on an assumption that our data sample is actually representative. But one thing we have to be careful with big data is that big data does not necessarily represent the population. It represents the population from whom the data is collected. And if we use the same old methods that we used with the old statistics, we're likely to get biased results, because we're going to find out about the patterns of behavior of people who carry around cell phones, who interact on social media. We're not necessarily going to find out the story of everyone. And if we care about not leaving people behind, then we better be careful about what we do in terms of drawing inference from big data. The other thing is, the other caution I have is that the real power of our ability to visualize and map what's going on in the globe really requires us to produce the rest of the data to populate the story. And that's the data that needs to be collected by national governments, by others that can really tell what's going on with the people that we look at from the sky. And the biggest challenge I see there is that we need data that goes below the national level in terms of its granularity. And right now, we're not really good at collecting data at low levels of geography from local governments, from intermediate governments, and really being able to kind of get a more granular view of what's going on. And we make a lot of assumptions to distribute national data in ways that we can tell stories, but I really think that it behooves us to find ways to get really good data about what's going on locally, because the local story is the real story, the experiential story about what's happening to people on the ground.
That's a very good point, actually, and I'm going to come back to you later on in the session to find out exactly what your thoughts are about how we do that. Francesca Perucci from UN Statistical Division. From the discussions that you've heard here, what do you think are now the areas that you need to focus on more to advance implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan, given that we have a timeline, 2 years to burn to the next forum?
Yes, thank you. So I think we have made a big step. If I think of where we were in Cape Town less than 2 years ago, we were sort of trying to figure out what we could do together, which resulted in the Cape Town Global Action Plan. Then from there, and I like to see this as a sort of a journey. I don't want to see the two events like in the two moments. It's a journey. We had a lot happening in between, including other events that feed into this. We had a wonderful meeting in Bristol, the Data Festival. We were in the same panel. And we had data and statistics discussed at the high-level political forum in July. So we had other milestones along the way where we could really strengthen this dialogue and understand how to do the work together. So from there, we moved to implementation, as we say. And I think we have a better sense of the areas where we need to focus, because this forum already showed where we saw the actual applications of what the Cape Town tells us to do. Like, I'm thinking the use of Earth observations to improve the measurement in the area of environment, which is the area in the SDGs, as we all know, I think, that is really lacking the data to measure progress, because some of the indicators are new, but some of the topics are just hard to measure. So a lot of progress being done there that can sort of guide us on the, what needs to be scaled up and really mainstreamed in the statistical production, linking those tools to the more traditional data systems, like just simply thinking of population census data. Same with other tools like cell phone records. We've seen a lot of applications on the estimate of usual place of residence for multiple uses, understanding tourism or internal migration, etc. So those are sort of concrete examples of what has been done over the last year or so, or couple of years, that need to be further mainstreamed, I would say, in the overall data and statistical production, and that have huge potential. So now, how do we do that? And I think that's where I see we still have some gaps. I don't know if you want to call it gaps, but some areas where we still need to get better clarity. I think we still don't engage enough with the whole community. We had a discussion just earlier on the assessment, with the program committee of the forum, the assessment of this forum. And we had a little survey. And we looked at, what the achievements are. And then we had a discussion on what is data. And we are the monsters, the statisticians, so we think in a very structured way. And I think we still don't see, we have certainly improved the dialogue, but I think we still don't have a complete understanding of what data is. And then we had panelists who see data in a different way, and that's not still, it's not yet captured completely. So I think in terms of the, where we can still improve is getting a better understanding of what this broader community is, so engaging even further, in a broader sense, and making users part of our system. So almost all of the sessions we had, it was still a little bit the sense that we were talking to each other. No matter how much you expand and you talk to other data communities, we still don't really talk to those who are eventually making the use of those data. And that's so tremendously important. We had 2 sessions dedicated to trust in data. And what emerged from those 2 sessions that is so important to make what we produce relevant to users and to make sure that users understand the data, especially to prevent misuse of data or miscommunication, even when data are of strong quality. And so really engage them from the start. And we even discussed yesterday making users part of this, what we call the national statistical system, where you bring all the data communities, but users should be one main part of the system.
Who do you mean by users? Who do you mean by users?
Who's
not in that conversation that you think needs to be in that conversation?
Sorry, say it again.
I was wondering, when you say users need to be part of this conversation, who do you mean? Who are those users, and who's not part of this conversation that you want to bring into this conversation?
So, what do we mean by users? I think from the point of view of the statisticians, we normally think in terms of the policy makers, right? So those were not necessarily here in this conversation. And I'm not talking about the high level, what we call the high level political representation. I'm talking also about everyone who needs the data to inform their policy making, their interventions, they are even down to the smaller programs. But then we also we need to engage citizens and the public in general. And that came out very clearly in the discussion on trust in data. And really from the data production side, both from statisticians and the broader data community, really understanding what is relevant and what the users need to better understand what is happening in society. That's where we say we had to make users part of the system from the beginning, where you see the system as a broad set of different actors that they have to talk to each other.
So, one user that I think is important to note that we heard a lot from here are journalists. And data journalism is actually quite alive and well, I was happy to find out. And the extent to which they're being able to use data to then bring data in a new way to the public to tell different stories is going to be an important part of winning the public's trust and the public's willingness to support data collection.
I couldn't find funding for my lady data journalist, Winnie Kamau.
So that's something to take forward to Switzerland as well.
Why don't people fund journalists to events? Why?
So actually the UN Foundation did, through our affiliate organisation Data.01, we did actually run a press fellowship.
Can you extend that handshake?
I certainly will, yes.
And we at the Lincoln Institute also do journalist events. We train journalists in Latin America and in the US every year.
Any one of them here?
Of the journalists here? Mm-hmm. No, they didn't come here. Nope.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Okay, that feels like another session. You may have to stay for another session after this if you want to pursue that point. But no, that's a good point. And I think the point about journalists is that this is a community that is actively looking for statistics and is actually helping this community tell those stories. But I think what we've heard in a lot of sessions is that this community itself needs to be able to communicate its stories better as well. That certainly, to me, is one of the takeaways, I think, from the forum. Let me bring Zachary Mwangi in. Zachary, for the international statistical community, I mean, you can pick up on what Francesca's been talking about. What are you taking away from this? What are the next steps in advancing data for development?
Thank you very much. I think one of my good takeaway is that the National Statistical Offices will still exist come 2030. We had a very good session where we are looking at, do we need to do away with the National Statistical System? Or National Statistics Office, we agreed, we need them, but significant reforms are required. And that's why issues of capacity is required. We need strategic leadership in these National Statistical Offices, for example. But the centrality of the National Statistics Office is key to the statistical development globally. So we need to do more on that. The whole issue of communication, statisticians should not communicate to themselves. I think we've done enough of that. It's now to get other skills, other partners to come on board so that we produce the statistics that we need and we are advised on how we package so that it's about strengthening the partnerships. That comes up as a very key kind of point that is coming up from this forum, issues of partnership, and even looking ahead, the non-state actors, the new data sources, the new partners, the whole issue about the standards, how do you deal with the standards? Because again, we did agree, the trust of official statistics is key. The trust, we have the standards themselves developed, we have the fundamental principles of official statistics, but as my colleague here is raising the whole issue about the standards in using the other alternative sources of data, the big data, for example. So again, as a gap is the issue of the learning institutions. More research work requires to be done continuously so that we ensure that we give the right kind of information so that the issue of trust is key. Again, also still in the national statistical system is the whole issue of the legal framework. We have to have it the right legal framework so that we could access the information even from the private sector, so that we have the mandate, or the agencies do have the mandate to do that. And the challenges are still there, the issues of capacity and the issue of having capacity build from demand side so that agencies at the national level, they are able to prioritize what kind of capacity is also required. The issue of the skill mix in the agencies themselves. We do not have to do or have honest statisticians in the National Bureau of Statistics. And more so, the issue of looking at the user themselves. But the big challenge that we need to work more on is to coordinate the whole of this data ecosystem. Coordination is key, but it is not easy. And finally, as we coordinate, I think as we coordinate, we look at the framework that exists. How do we implement, for example, the Cape Town Global Action Plan, which is a very excellent plan, which came from the first World Data Forum. So at the national level, that is at the global level, but the implementation takes place at the national level. So at the national levels, we need to align our plans, our national strategies for the development of statistics within this global plan.
So I just want to follow up on a couple of points there, Zachary, and also, Francesca, for you. This is, I think, for the statistical community, and particularly for the UN side of it, the coordinators. Zachary, you talked about capacity building, you talked about coordination, but these issues were contained in the Cape Town Global Action Plan already. They were already identified, the need for country-led agendas. That was already in that plan 2 years ago. So I want to understand from you, how has that thinking progressed here? and where must it go next? What are the specific points within that? So that we feel that we've achieved something on those issues at this forum. I wonder if you could shed any light on that.
Yes, I think a lot of progress is also being made. A need assessment was done. Priority areas of capacity also identified, even at the global level. And even at the country level, more is being done so that plans, the national strategies for development of statistics have been developed, although more needs to be done so that they are more inclusive, so that the other players in the data are also engaged. But I want to believe, like, even from my own country, we have extensive programs towards development of statistics at the country level, with actually a lot of support from various development partners, for example. We have the World Bank in place. We have also statistical cooperation with some statistical agencies, like we have with Statistics Sweden, for example. We are having with the UK Statistics Office and various. So a lot of progress is being, there are opportunities.
Okay, did you want to chime in, Francesca?
Yes, just to add perhaps that we worked throughout this year and a half trying to understand how the needs have evolved in terms of the capacity building and working with the colleagues from Paris 21 who've been very active in trying to assess exactly what these needs are and how you really can put the country priorities at the center. And we had a survey, in fact, in collaboration with the high-level group for partnership, coordination and capacity building, which is this group of member states that provides sort of the strategic thinking behind that. And the survey really helped understand what these countries are facing and what their priorities are. And then building on that, they developed together this paper, we call it the paper on the implementation of the Cape Town Action Plan, which has a lot of these elements. How do you sort of define the principles of capacity building to make sure that the country priorities are at the center? We had a little bit of discussion on that in the panel on financing, right? The coordination basically goes back to the countries. It's up to the countries to define their priorities and then sort of have the dialogue with the donor communities on how you then mobilize the necessary resources. And we had a lot of the discussion here at this forum and around, you know, the ideas that were developed in this paper, and then that sort of was brought even further with some ideas on what a possible mechanism could be to facilitate that, especially taking into account what we just talked about, that this is a completely new landscape. We're not seeing national statistical systems just with the NNSO and then some other data producers from government agencies. It's a much more complex, with a lot of new actors. But still, I think there is strong agreement, and this came out a lot in some of the sessions, that we still need some sort of governance system or some framework that for us is the fundamental principles. Sorry, Nena, very boring, but the fundamental principles of official statistics, that we said that they do not need to be changed, but we have to sort of reinterpret them and still keep them as our foundation so that we know that we have a way to ensure the rigor and the quality of the data. But then we have to plug in a lot of these new ideas and new data sources and new principles. Open data. All the principles of open data are so central to the implementation of this. For the users, it's centered on people, on the users. And they're being integrated, and this is the work that the whole Statistical Commission is worried about, and they have a working group on that.
Okay, so Sophie, you just wanted to come in quickly, and then George will come to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to reflect a little bit on your question, because I see actually perhaps one of the successes that I feel the forum has had throughout these 2 years, even though we kind of saying we already identify these challenges, we already see these challenges, but I think that is good because we started to identify the common challenges that there are, and we're starting to speak the same language that even I'm from a donor perspective, I'm starting to use the same language and speak the same language and see and address these challenges that we have in common. So I think that is something actually good and a good step forward. And maybe perhaps now for the next forum and for the forums ahead, so to speak, the question lies about to be concrete and to implement. But I still think that it's, it's a good take that we're having these discussions and that we're seeing these challenges and even that we're repeating these challenges. So I still think that is, allows us to better answer to these challenges, basically.
So I would say that one thing that we really need to be concerned about is the privatization of the data commons. And we've seen a lot of that in the United States, where public data gets collected and curated by private sources and then sold back even to the public sector for their use. And that's a dangerous trend, because you don't have control of the data anymore. And it really is a public function to collect and curate the data, and we need to really commit both the intellectual and the financial resources to make sure that the public sector has the means to do its own job and actually produce the data commons. In the United States, all data on say, property, on individual property is public record. But if you want to get access to the complete public record of properties owned in the United States, you have to buy it from private sources, because nobody has bothered to find ways to gather and clean and make that data available for analysis. No one's really talked to the communities who would use that data, because they think the communities who use that data will go and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to private sources to come and fix that data up for them. And so we need to, maintain a commitment to understand that there is a data commons. There's a public good that we want to protect, and that public good is produced by the public sector.
So that's actually a really good point to take us into a discussion of something I think that's forward-looking for the next 2 years. By the time we get to Switzerland, how much more do we need to have worked out the principles around open data? Data as a public good, using data from new sources, this legal framework, and how much of a frontier or a priority focus area, let's say, is that now in the next 2 years by Switzerland, by Bern? We need to figure that out, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Others on that?
Is that your point?
It was a question, really.
It was so passionate. I thought thank you for the contribution. You're such a great moderator. 2 years ago, we had already started making trouble around open by default. And that's what the World Wide Web Foundation is trying to push to everyone. Because we believe that data is a right, it belongs to the citizens, and open government data should be open by default. Data that's in the public domain, because it belongs to the citizens. So one of the things I would like to put on this table, it's not a table, on this big panel, to these wonderful people here, is that we start working collectively on open by default. Open by default in public data, that is very important. During the the high-level conference on data revolution in Africa, we also brought the data communities. There are quite a number of data communities, and I think that, like I said, stats people are nice people, they are good people, they are open people. So keep moving in that direction, so that we'll open up more to other data communities. I want to come back to, I'm looking for a good word. The good word is data colonization, but I shouldn't use it. I should use probably digital colonization. I should use corporate hijacking. I don't know what the right word is. Maybe you will help me. But the thing is, apart from government data, there is citizen-generated data. There is data that you and I generate that will be sold back to us.
Right.
And in fact, sold back to other people. About. And that is why the next time you see me, I'll be talking about data privacy and respect of data rights for citizens. Because really, the way it is going at this moment, maybe by the time we get to Bern, even your own data will be sold back to you at a higher price. And I think that is something as a citizen that speaks to me. It's not just statistics. It is other data sources that contribute to the digital economy, and we don't have the correct legal framework around it. And citizens, great, the EU has a GDPR, but there are 1 billion Africans, and we don't have a whole lot. We have Mauritius, I think Kenya, and Cote d'Ivoire who have these data protection laws, but compliance, I don't know about it. So as a citizen, that is one thing I think we should put on the table here. So those three, open by default, data communities, more interaction, more communication, more collaboration across data communities, and personal data and privacy protection and respect.
Okay. I just want to, we don't have a huge amount of time yet, but I do want to kind of push you all now to think about what are your sectors, what are your organizations going to pursue, what are you going to do differently? And one thing you've all talked about is better coordination. And Zachary, you were talking about how actually there has already been better coordination, it's already improved, but everyone is saying it needs to be better. So what is your organization? What are you? What is your sector? What are you going to do to improve coordination for better, more and better data for development by the time we get to Switzerland in 2 years' time? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So one of the things that we're hoping to do, and we've already kind of laid the groundwork for it, and was really advanced here at the meeting, is we're trying to build a global observatory of cities. And we want to be able to tell the story of cities at some granular level, which is why I whine a lot about the absence of local data, because you really do need local data to tell the story of cities. We want to examine things like how does the financial status of the cities influence its urban form over time? Do you get a lot of sprawl generated by urban invasion as opposed to planned development using infrastructure and the right kind of investment? Those things are something that I think is absolutely necessary to track the SDGs and also the new urban agenda that came out of Habitat 3.
And how are you going to actually make that happen, the global?
Well, so we've been working with the OECD, UCLG, the United City and Local Government, and we met with the European Space Agency here. We've been talking with NASA about finding ways to use, like I said, tell a story from the ground up and the top down, and they've already now got an entire map of all built up places created by the European Space Agency that now we can populate with other data that can tell the story from the ground. And the idea will be to find out what's going on in informal settlements, find out what's going on with the level of poverty, and see how that also translates into the evolution of the form of the place, which is, I think, going to be both fascinating and illuminating for us.
But how are you going to populate it with, as you say, ground-up data? I mean,
I'm sorry, what?
How are you going to populate it with ground-up data as opposed to top-down?
So, with the help of the nation states, the UN, and others, we're working actually with cities to begin to collect and provide some of the data on what's actually going on within their boundaries.
Will it have a component for citizens to actually contribute?
What's that?
Will it have a component for citizens to actually contribute to that? I mean, that's how you get
to like crowdsource the data? Yeah. Not yet, but maybe we will by Bern. I don't know, but that's 2 years.
But that's how you broaden the echo chamber.
Yeah, that's exactly. And certainly what we want to be able to do is capture the full story, right? And one of the things that and I'll stop here, but one of the things that emerged as a main theme in this meeting here, this forum, was the challenge of trying to track migration and the movement of people. And that's really an important thing, because we want to understand the movement of people, especially with all the kind of refugee crises we've seen around the world. But one of the things we don't understand, and those are often the people who are left out as well, right? But what we don't understand is what's going on with the movement of capital. And those people who are left out, they're generally left out of the capital markets. And the movement of capital in those capital markets is producing all sorts of mischief, mostly in the complete absence of affordable housing in almost any place. And that's because we've opened up housing markets in the world to global capital who can invest in them and buy shelter away from local populations. But how are we going to understand that story unless we actually start to dig down and get data on the flow of capital? I've been trying to track this down for 3 years. The flow of global capital into housing markets around the world, it's almost impossible to find.
Okay, so that's your task for the next 2 years,
that's
then,
okay.
George, with the Global Observatory of Cities. Sophie Hadram, what is CEDA going to do differently?
Yeah.
How are you going to improve coordination?
Okay. I think I would like to start by just acknowledging that, or something that we acknowledge at CEDA, and perhaps that all donors do acknowledge, that in order to finance the 2030 agenda, the development finance is not enough, basically. We need to act smart, we need to act perhaps as, we need to leverage more funds, we need to think more strategically, and perhaps even more innovative about how we use our funds, so that the specific value added of development cooperation is, we need to be more strategic, basically, and that involves in how we're working with our partners. And so to be a bit more concrete than that, we have a new strategy at CEDA, and just so you understand how the Swedish Development Corporation works, basically CEDA and the Swedish Development Corporation is governed on strategies. So we have bilateral strategies with countries, and then we have also thematic and global strategy. And we actually have a new strategy that specifically outlines capacity development for the 2030 agenda. And within this strategy, we have specifically pointed to how to work with statistics and data, with statistical capacity development.
But does that live with the bilateral strategies section?
No,
right.
no. It's one of these global strategies we have, yes. So it's a new, relatively new strategy, and we're still trying to figure out how to work with that strategy and how we should prioritize. And I think, so to be quite concrete, I think what we're going to do together with Statistics Sweden is kind of discuss how we work and how we collaborate with our partners to use our funds in the most innovative way to make, most buck for the banks, to be quite sincere, basically seeing the immense needs that are there in line with the 2030 agenda. So, but at least it's a bit concrete on what we will do, but I'll give you a better answer in 2 years on what we've done.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that. Okay, that's actually a point that we brought up in the financing session as well, about how to better use funds in a resource-constrained environment. Zachary Mwangi, you were on that session. You were part of that session with me. With both hats on here for the Kenya Bureau of Statistics and also for the UN Statistical Commission, what are you going to do differently we'll be talking about this issue of improving coordination between the different parts of this community. What are you going to do?
I think what we also require is the openness, the transparency of the kind of support that is being provided. If, as my colleague says here, if it's available, it becomes easier to know what stock, who is funding what. And at the local level or the country level, the initiative that we do is to engage the partners so that we create a forum for them where we are now discussing statistical activities so that we establish which development partner is engaged in which activity, for example, and what are the gaps. I think that engagement is very, very key, where things are discussed in the open so that we know CEDA is funding this area, another development partner is funding this area, so that we remove the issue of the overlap. So that is what we are doing at the country level to ensure that we have these donor forums so that we appreciate. Even at the users, because even the producers themselves, because the producers are also being given a lot of resources, for example. So when you have the user symposium or forums, for example, you discuss about the data needs. These are the data needs that we do require for our development initiative for the issues of SDGs, for example, and these are the gaps. You say this is what we require, and this is the data source, and this data source exists. This one doesn't exist, but we are getting funding or we are getting support from a different kind of partner. So I think the issue is to engage more. And that's also now come to the underlying issue about the statistical literacy, because people need to appreciate that what is it that they require and where can they get the funding or the resources that they require.
Okay. Francesca, you want to pick up on any of that in terms of what is the statistical community now going to do differently to improve coordination, or what are the gaps that you're going to work on in the next couple of years?
Yes, what are we doing differently? I think we have already started to sort of redefine a little bit the way we work. The Statistical Commission, of course, is a group of member states, but they coordinate themselves, right? Because they define their own. We have to do more of that. But that's the idea. We still service the Statistical Commission and the national statistical systems, but we can play increasingly, in all these different work streams to happen, and then eventually come back together.
Okay. Nena, from the point of view of civil society, what is the future role? What is the future, what is the priority now for your organization and your sector, do you think?
I think it's important that we reach out to the statistics community as well. I try to understand and communicate better. Sometimes civil society wants to be aggressive, but it's not in all spaces that aggression is required. No, ferocious advocacy is the right word, okay, strong advocacy. So sometimes soft advocacy works better. We also need to reach in within the civil society itself. Actually, with Wikimedia, we train people, we're training all sorts to be able to understand towards data literacy. I think it came out across all that people need to understand data better. And of course, there is the work on media. We can't run away from data journalism because data needs to be repackaged, spiced up in a way that people understand it and use it for themselves. And yes, I'm going to be asking for funding. That's part of my job.
Okay. So panelists, we only have a few minutes left, but I have one last question for you. And this is going to be like a quick fire round, if you like. So in an earlier session, someone said that the first World Data Forum was where the plan was established. The second World Data Forum, this one, is where we've thought about how to implement that plan. So what will World Data Forum number 3 be about? Or what should it be about? Didn't give you any chance to prepare this question. I've just sprung it on you. So you have to come up with your best answer straight away. Zachary, why don't you go first?
Yes, we are lucky that now we have a fantastic plan, the Cape Town Global Action Plan, and implementation has started. I think we'll continue with the debate and the discussion, and more so we take stock. Where are we? We had Neil as a panelist in the previous session. He was impatient. We need to be patient also. We need to review where are we in the implementation of the Global Action Plan, because that will be 4 years. Yes.
So you want it to be a review session? That's what you, okay, okay. Francesca Perucci.
I think I want it to be a forum about looking at the impact of data and the results of our investments. Aishan said, what we can produce, what the investment will deliver, and I want to see the impact of data. I think we haven't seen enough. We have some very good examples here on the impact of gender data, which is a tremendously important area and cuts across a lot of different policy areas and priorities. But I think next forum should be really showing what the data can do and have a lot of users who come and very enthusiastically tell us how their lives have changed, and not just the policymakers.
Yeah, I was going to say just about the same thing. I think that the next forum should be a showcase of tools, techniques, and a celebration of the things that are now possible as a result of the advancements that have been made over the last 2 years. Some of the stunning achievements that we would expect if we really bring to bear all of our creativity to really addressing this kind of challenge.
It's almost like an expo.
Like an exposition, yes, yes. Yeah.
Sophie Hatton.
No, I mean, I think I have to agree with my panelists. Let's talk about concrete results.
Yes.
No. This is getting too easy. You have to come up with something different.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we agree. But beyond what data can do, where have we come? I think it should be where have I
Yes. what we can do.
Yeah, so what has the Web Foundation done since Cape Town? And I had suggested earlier on, instead of just having, I think we should have country stands. And the country will say between Cape Town and now, this is where we are. And at this point, I want to say thank you to UAE. That pavilion was great. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you to all my panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, this first panel is now going to exit the stage, and I'm going to hand over to Stefan Schweinfest from the UN Statistics Division to take us through the next part of this panel. But I would like you to invite you to applaud our panelists again. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, in this second part, and there will be a third part to this closing session, I'm joined by two eminent personalities, and I have to take over now the job of Rajesh, but I'm not sure I'm able to do it in such a charming, communicative way, but I'll try my best at the end of a long day. I'm joined by Mr. Mahmoud Mohildin, Senior Vice President for the 2030 Development Agenda from the World Bank, and of course by Gabriela Vukovic, President of the Hungarian Central Statistical Authority and co-chair of our high-level group that is guiding all the work on the World Data Forum. And we would like to share with you a few reflections at the end of this World Data Forum from the respective perspectives, and I will add a few words from my perspective as a director from the UN Statistics Division, and then we will share the final version of the Dubai Declaration. And then, just so that you know what is happening next, then I will invite Abdullah Lota from the Dubai organizing partners here nationally to join me for the closing remarks. So, before we do that, perhaps a couple of final reflections from your perspective, Mahmoud, from the World Bank. What did you hear? What did you see? What did it inspire you to? And what do you think from your perspective can we do together in the next 2 years?
Right. Thank you so much. I'd like first to start by thanking our wonderful hosts for organizing this very well arranged for forum. And please join me in thanking them for their hospitality, their kindness, and their efficiency. Just looking into the different people behind the scenes and organizing smaller gatherings, I know how tough it is, and you really managed to do fantastically well. Thank you again. So, on the substance of discussion and building on the very good conversation in the prior panel, there are very positive developments, and there are a couple of challenges. There are things that could be fixed within this community, and there are matters that may require, especially in the areas related to coordination, collaboration, and cooperation, require more work. So if I start by this one, because since the very start of the SDGs formulation and the agenda, that could be even before Rio, the meeting there, and then in the building up of the SDGs agenda, 3 tracks were established. One is related to finance, one is related to the implementation, and another one related to data. Then, most recently, we have a 4th track, which is about science, technology, and innovation. In some happy occasions, these 4 tracks speak to each other. In some other occasions, happy or not, they don't. And I think when it comes to implementation and achieving the very ambitious goals, requirements for some sort of interlinkages, platforms, sharing information. There is no finance for finance as far as the finance track is involved, which I'm more involved in, or the implementation without finance and data, and there is no data for data. There could be art for art, but not necessarily in what we do here. So I think it could be the responsibility for the leaders of the different tracks, and with the good convening power of the UN, that we need really to do a better job in getting these tracks to speak nicely together. Of course, if it doesn't at the global level, it should be doing a better job at the national level. I could be very conventional and traditional here. One of the best areas of coordination is basically when budgets of countries and the states are being discussed. And if it is not in the budget, with all due respect, it doesn't exist. If it is not in the most or the second most important document of any state after its constitution, whatever we're talking about here is not reflected in the budget process at the national or the subnational level, we are really in trouble. And this is not just the problem of data and statistics. This is very much as well the issue related to the very SDGs. How many countries which are submitting their VNRs voluntarily every year, the voluntary national reviews, have provided budgets for all of the elements, including the data requirements. So this is a general point. On the very specific discussions, our team here at the bank, led by Haishan and Fu and her fantastic team, have been almost in every session engaged. I had my own chances as well. 3 things that I like to highlight, and I think they were reflected in different ways in the previous session. One is the issue of trust. The second is the issue of disaggregation. And the third is basically how to harness technology and the disruption of technology. So the issue of trust, I think since the ANGA or the General Assembly meetings with the Secretary General himself talking about deficit of trust, but this is the bigger one. This is a deficit of trust at a political perspective that he compared it to other deficits like deficits in balance of payments or budget. But here we are talking about another deficit of trust that could really be bridged by having better data, more up-to-date data, and standing the test of quality and timeliness. And here I think the statistical community and its partnership, government, private sector, think tanks, and I'm happy that the citizens and what they produce and what they monitor are becoming more strongly than ever before as very strong partners in building that kind of trust. But trust needs really, especially after all of these issues of concern related to how trustworthy are some systems of data and how they are being revealed. They require investments, they require good collaboration, and they require, I like what was mentioned a couple of times, that each individual would recognize herself when whatever public data is being shared, which is really very difficult to obtain. Then I think when we talk about localization of data, that could be another way of dealing with this trust issue as much and as far as we can do. When it comes to the second element on the disaggregation, and I'm happy that there are lots of good work happening there without too much bragging or propaganda about what the World Bank is doing, but I can say that because everything that we do, we do it in partnership with others. We do it with the UN system, with governments, with the private sector, and with the think tanks. And if we take the issue related to disaggregated data in agriculture, food, and nutrition, there had been very good work that was announced during the General Assembly for the 50 countries that should be engaged in order to have the achievements of their targets by 2030. This is a good example that required lots of funding as well, that this kind of collaboration doesn't come free. And if it comes free, as sometimes being announced, don't ever trust it. So there are lots of funds behind that, including our IDA support. This is the fund for the poorest countries, building household surveys and providing funding for a variety of countries. And I'd like here to mention around $600 million being spent with 25 countries to establish better capacity for their data systems for a decent period of time. And the last one, which is related to technology and disruptions coming from technology and the great contribution of technological advances when it comes to our knowledge. I subscribe really to the good comments related to abuse of big data and how can we use them better without bias, without manipulation, and with good public policies, not just the regulations. Start with the public policies for data, information, and knowledge, and then we can talk about regulations. But what had been done in Europe, I think, could be a good reference as well when it comes to regulations. But what we like on this issue of the on technology, that there are lots of good examples that are happening today in the field, either using traffic data or mobile data or satellite data. And I like as well this comment on how to get grassroots data speaking to the skies, or the skies speaking to the citizens in the field. And we have many good examples on that in variety of countries, from small economies like Haiti to very big and large economies like India. Lots of good innovation that is happening, but require a great deal of collaboration with governments and the private sector. And finally, I think there is a great deal of work when it comes to the culture. When we're talking about data, it's not just the data systems and availing raw data and dealing with the challenges of the old black boxes. Being open, making us always ready to answer the what and the how and the details. And as a researcher in the past, I always had it as a trouble to get access to the raw data, and always the statisticians, the national statisticians would protect it for some reason. I hope it's good, but sometimes it's not. So basically, to have these data open for tests and verification is a good thing. And I think for that, we need really to have this kind of culture of openness that I think we learned from it ourselves in the bank. When you open our data systems, and Shayda Badia is here, very active participant, and she remembered the debate about the cost of opening the data beyond the millions that could be really put as a sacrifice by those who were selling, quote unquote, the data. But again, the benefits of opening the data was great investment in other matters beyond the data systems. Now we are opening our WDR, the World Development Report, is being drafted with an open system. You don't need to wait for a whole year in order to get a final product, but while the researchers and the scientists and the development experts are doing the reports on knowledge, they are opening that for discussions until you have the final version. This is a change of culture before it's a change of a way of doing things. Great deal of work, but great deal of matters ahead of us, and I'm happy that the declaration or the draft declaration that I saw is answering many of these challenges in very practical, actionable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud, and thank you also to the World Bank in general terms. I mean, we have a big agreement between the United Nations and the World Bank that was signed at the highest level. And one of the 4 priority areas that was identified there was data and statistics. It was...
Yeah, the 4 are data, humanitarian development nexus work, SDGs, and climate change. So you have data first and then data for the three other items. So we are at the top of this agreement.
So we are connected at the highest levels there, and we are, of course, committed at the working level to fill that out with practical meaning over the next couple of weeks, months, and years, I'm sure. Gabriela, under the Statistical Commission, of course, in 2015, we created the high-level group on and I always forget those three letters, partnership, coordination, and capacity. It's a long name, but in a way we knew already then that those were the three important topics, partnership, coordination, and capacity, with the focus had to be on these things to actually really achieve the agenda. The high-level group under your leadership has prepared this World Data Forum, and we'll actually start tomorrow morning to start planning for the third UN World Data Forum. And what are your thoughts at the end of this World Data Forum?
Thank you, Stefan. As you said, tomorrow morning at an unruly early hour, we shall start the preparation of the third UN World Data Forum. But as was mentioned before, this is a never-ending story, really. And that means that it gives us the hope to stay in business and that we always will have something to do about data and about development, capacity development and methodological development, technical development. But in order to stay in business, we need to change the business model. And I think this is one of the very important takeaways that we can have from this forum also, that statistical offices need to be in the driving seat, need to be central in producing data for the SDGs. But in order to be able to deliver, statistical offices have to speed up modernization, and they really need to change their business model, engaging more with stakeholders and actually speeding up, as John Pullinger said in one of the big meetings, step on the gas. And I think we started to, but maybe not aggressively enough. And maybe we should really think about how we can speed up, not only for our sake, in fact, not for our sake, but for our stakeholders' sake, and in order to deliver all the data, all the analysis and all the presentation of data that we need to do. And I think somebody asked, the moderator, yes, in the previous panel, what we expect, what the panelists expected from the third data forum. I think that what I really would like to see there is a lot of analysis and a lot of data presentation, because that means that we have high quality data already, and there is something to analyze and there is something to present. Also to present to the politicians, to the policymakers, and I think that presentation is one of the important things to make them understand what data there are available and how they can use the data for SDG monitoring, but also in general for the monitoring of various policies. I think this forum gave a lot of inspiration to participants, and also among them to the national statistical systems, also because we could see what others are able to do in producing data, what processes they can use, what techniques they can use in processing data. And I hope that maybe the other data producers, other than official statisticians, also had some inspiration from the values of official statistics, what the real value of official statistics is, the existing quality frameworks, the existing legal frameworks, the existing principles and standards that are sort of obligatory in official statistics. And I think that maybe other data producers can also be inspired by these principles and these standards. We have come very far. If you think about the MDGs, you just said that the HRG was established in 2015. That was the end of the MDG period. And if you think about the MDGs, which were not really country-driven, which we didn't manage to monitor as much as we wanted to and would have needed to, we have come already very far with the SDGs in that respect. The SDGs, the definition or the setting of SDGs was already very much country-driven. The setting of indicators, the methodology of indicators is also very much country-driven. And this forum and the previous one and the next one, which aims at bringing together all the actors and to help build partnerships for data. This is also country-driven. The high-level group consists of 22 country representatives. The Statistical Commission, of course, is of country representatives. So I think this is a very important element that countries are really the owners of this whole process and also, of course, of the data. And when we think about partnerships and financing and the production of data in the future, we also have to think that countries should have ownership of those data, and those data are not for themselves. They are not there just to describe something, but it's also for countries to use for the SDGs, for all other planning, for all other strategies that countries are engaging in. And that is very important in the sense that national statistical offices and national data systems need to be strengthened and be sustainable, not just there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gabriela. Perhaps a few thoughts from my side. I definitely got the feeling that we are doing something right when Nena a few minutes ago confirmed that official statisticians are not bad people. I think when we started a couple of years ago, I definitely had the feeling whenever I walked into a room where they were talking about data that I was the dusty dinosaur. And I think we have come a long way. I think in many of the conversations, I felt actually an amazing coherence of the problem analysis and the problem statement. I think we have really, over the last 2 years, definitely over these two fora, developed a common language to understand each other, to understand how we look at the world, what are the challenges, and how do we see possible solution forwards. Now it's time to take actions to walk into that direction, and of course the most important element in that is the keyword partnership, and I'm really looking forward to working with everybody, with the World Bank, with of course with member states, with everybody here in the room in this direction. We do have concrete output. When the high-level group looked at the World Data Forum, we said we did not just want to go home on Wednesday evening. And so there was quite a bit of effort put into the Dubai Declaration, which you have seen, and we have gotten lots of interesting comments. And over the last 2 days, the original draft came from the high-level group, of course. And over the last 2 days, we have made some adjustments and taken into account what everybody was feeding back to us. So it's my great pleasure to read to you the Dubai Declaration right now, which is our document as we then leave this room here. So the Dubai Declaration states the following: supporting the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data. We, the participants gathered here in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, for the 2018 United Nations World Data Forum, from national statistical offices and other parts of the national statistical systems, from other data communities, government institutions, private sector, civil society, academia, and media, stressing that the full ambition of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development cannot be realized without quality, timely, relevant, open, and disaggregated data to ensure that no one is left behind, recognizing that the 2030 Agenda requires that national statistical systems transform and develop to be agile and responsive to meet the increased demands of data users, including for the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda, recognizing that the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data, launched at the first United Nations World Data Forum held in Cape Town, South Africa in January 2017, and adopted by the United Nations Statistical Commission and welcomed by member states in the General Assembly Resolution 71-313, that this Cape Town Global Action Plan guides the implementation of programs and activities to respond to the data needs of the 2030 Agenda, stressing that the need to support fundamental data collection programs, such as the 2020 Population and Housing Census Round, stressing the importance of coordination across the statistical system, including better use and integration of administrative data sources, acknowledging that the data demands for the 2030 Agenda require urgent, new, standards-based and interoperable solutions that leverage the power of new data sources and technologies through partnerships between national statistical authorities and the private sector, civil society, and the academia and other research institutions, acknowledging that the 2030 Agenda explicitly calls for enhanced support for strengthening data collection and capacity building in member states and the capacity of national statistical offices and data systems to ensure access to high-quality, timely, relevant, and disaggregated data. Further, acknowledging that the 2030 Agenda, in the 2030 Agenda, member states committed to promote transparent and accountable scaling up of appropriate public-private cooperation to exploit the contribution to be made by a wide range of data, including Earth observation and geospatial information, while ensuring national ownership in supporting and tracking progress, stressing that many national statistical systems still face serious challenges, and as a result, accurate and timely data about people's lives are lacking, and many people remain invisible. Recognizing that ensuring and maximizing the effectiveness of financing for new and innovative forms of capacity development is essential for the success of implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan, and that innovative funding strategies and coordinated country-led actions that focus on national priorities are needed to bridge the existing funding gap. And lastly, recognizing that trust among producers and users of data and statistics is key for the effective functioning of the national, regional, and global statistical systems in full adherence with the United Nations fundamental principles of official statistics. So we, gathered here, resolve to 1. Ensure that quality, relevant, timely, open and disaggregated data by income, sex, age, race, ethnicity, migration status, disability and geographic location and other characteristics relevant in national contexts are made available and accessible to all users. We resolve to work in collaborative manner to bring all data communities together to implement the Cape Town Global Action Plan, our common framework for the modernization and strengthening of statistical systems and the design and implementation of country-led statistical capacity building activities necessary to achieve the 2030 Agenda. And third, we resolve to undertake key actions under the 6 strategic areas of the Cape Town Global Action Plan and establish partnerships to leverage the power of new data sources and technologies to provide data to inform decision-making and investment while ensuring the central role of national statistical offices as the work under a mature framework of principles and practices to assure that statistical data products meet the highest standards. We are determined to mobilize financing at domestic and international levels and ensure political commitment within each country for adequate allocation of domestic resources to strengthen data systems, to address existing gaps in the technical and institutional capabilities of national data and statistical systems, to improve the coverage, frequency, and availability of quality data. increased availability of sustainable development data with the vital support of governments and in closer working partnership with stakeholders from academia, civil society, the private sector, and the public at large will enable stronger evidence-based decision-making. And finally, we call for the establishment of an innovative funding mechanism open to all stakeholders under United Nations membership oversight that is able to respond in a fast and efficient manner to the priorities of national data and statistical systems, with a goal to mobilize both domestic and international funds and active partnerships and funding opportunities to strengthen the capacity of national data and statistical systems. The funding mechanism, entirely demand-driven, will be created under the mandate of the United Nations Statistical Commission and operate under the guidance of representatives of national statistical systems and different data and donor communities who will support the decision-making on the operational modalities and on raising resources to address the data needs for the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and will be serviced by a secretariat located at an international institution with global membership. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dubai Declaration of the 24th of October 2018. So I would like to thank my two partners in crime here, Mahmoud and Gabriela. I will do that now with Abdullah. So then I thank my two partners here, and I would like to invite Abdullah Lota for the final closing of this World Data Forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Each one of you meant something to us in the United Arab Emirates and in particular in FCSA.
It's just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
Unbelievable. I never thought something like this exists, honestly.
Oh, it was spectacular.
Oh, it was fantastic, really beautiful.
They have secrets, and I want to know their secrets.
Thank you very much. That's our sign. So for all of you, thank you. Would you like to have a seat? Up to you. I might stay here for 30 minutes. We paid for it. Beyond data and statistics, my learning from this event, I did realize that 99.9% of us who gathered here in Dubai, coming from all around the world, for the last 3 days, believed in three main things. We all believed in peace, we all practiced respect, and we all expressed appreciation. So, don't think too much about the 0.1% that don't believe in the three things. We were challenged by some, doubted by few, disliked by one or two. But we stayed committed and determined. We are aware that we are a professional, experienced, and a generous team, just like Mr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin said. but we also have a special trait, and that is being crazy and wild in order to always go beyond the norm and the average. We do things with passion. We think of not only the brain, but also the heart, the soul, and the 5 senses before we make choices. We believe in making experiences and leaving beautiful memories behind us. For us, we don't work for something because we have to, but because that work will mean something to someone out there. You are truly an exceptional crowd, truly. Therefore, you have deserved an exceptional event and super special arrangement. I met many of you, and you guys know me very well. I spent a couple of minutes, maybe more than that, maybe in my car, Jonathan, and maybe in the corridors with others. I would like to stay in touch, personally and professionally. And if you wish to reconnect with me or anyone at FCSA, please go to the UAE Pavilion today before the whole place gets dismantled, because this whole place was built for you. So let's stay in touch. Now, I would like to request each one of you who don't speak Arabic to put the headset on, as I will continue delivering my message in my mother tongue language. اليوم وبرعاية كريمة من سيدي صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم نائب رئيس الدولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء حاكم دبي رعاه الله، ننهي أجندة أعمال منتدى الأمم المتحدة للبيانات العالمي 2018 في دورته الثانية هنا في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة الرائعة، حيث يجتمع أكثر من 200 جنسية يتعايشون بالسلم وأمان واحترام بعضهم للبعض. هنا في دبي الساحرة، حيث وبكل فخر سعدنا بهذه الاستضافة وباحتضان أهم محفل عالمي يعنى بالبيانات والإحصاءات والثورة الرقمية والفرص المتاحة لاستغلالها في خدمة تطلعات الشعوب والأجيال القادمة على مدى 3 أيام متواصلة. اطلعنا خلالها على أفضل الممارسات والتجارب العالمية، وتشاركنا الأفكار والمبادرات التي من شأنها الارتقاء بالخدمات المقدمة من قبل الحكومات والمؤسسات لكافة أفراد المجتمع. وسعدنا نحن في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة بمشاركة نخبة من القادة ومجموعة من صناع القرار وأكثر من 2000 خبير ومختص في مجال البيانات والإحصاءات من داخل الدولة وخارجها. واستطعنا من خلال هذا المنتدى الخروج بمقترحات وتوصيات تساعد على بناء الأنظمة الإحصائية بأفضل المقاييس العلمية المعتمدة دولياً. وضمن البرنامج الرسمي للأمم المتحدة تم عقد أكثر من 85 جلسة تحدث فيها أكثر من 400 خبير ومختص في علوم البيانات والإحصاءات والتنمية المستدامة. ولكن الحدث المبتكر والذي تميز بالإبداع كان جناح دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، والذي أخذ طابع المدينة الذكية ذات الحداثة والاستدامة في مكوناتها، التي عرضت فيها العديد من الجهات الحكومية والمؤسسات إنجازاتها وابتكاراتها في علوم البيانات والإحصاءات. كما تشرفنا في هذا الجناح الوطني المذهل بعروض وورش عمل وجلسات حوارية بلغ عددها أكثر من 38 جلسة تحدثت عن أحدث الابتكارات في جمع وتحليل البيانات لأغراض الأجندة الوطنية وأهداف التنمية المستدامة. أود وبكل فخر الإشادة بشباب الإمارات المتطوعين الذين شاركونا في استقبال ضيوف المنتدى العالمي وتقديم أفضل الخدمات، حيث كانوا مثالاً للتعاون والجد والعطاء في مساعدة الآخرين باحترافية ومهنية عالية. بلغ عددهم أكثر من 100 متطوع. قام على خدمتكم أكثر من 3000 شخص من دولة الإمارات، من شركات ومؤسسات حكومية واتحادية ومحلية وقطاع خاص، بمعنى كل ضيف كان له شخص يقوم بخدمته. هنا الفرق. هذا ما يحدث في دولة الإمارات. لقد تمخض عن هذا المنتدى خلال أيام انعقاده العديد من المشاريع الهامة، لعل أبرزها المبادرات التي تم إطلاقها بحضور كل من معالي أمين محمد نائب الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، ومعالي شمة بنت السهيل المزروعي وزيرة الدولة لشؤون الشباب، وبجهود مخلصة من فريق عمل الهيئة الاتحادية للتنافسية والإحصاء بقيادة الزميلة العزيزة وقائد المستقبل مهرة آل علي. تم في تلك الجلسة إطلاق مجلس الشباب الاستشاري لأهداف التنمية المستدامة، وأيضاً إطلاق مصنع سياسات المستقبل لجذب أفكار الشباب لخدمة أهداف التنمية المستدامة. إني على ثقة تامة بأن فعاليات المنتدى والنقاشات التي تمت خلاله سيكون لها المردود الوافي لتطوير العمل الإحصائي على مستوى الدولة. وختاماً أود أن أهنئكم على نجاح هذا المنتدى، وأتقدم بالشكر الجزيل وبالتقدير لكل من ساهم على إنجاح هذا المؤتمر بالرعاية أو بالشراكة أو بالحضور أو بتقديم أوراق العمل أو بإثراء النقاش من خلال المداخلات الهادفة. والشكر موصول إلى منظمة الأمم المتحدة وكافة الجهات المنطوية تحتها لثقتها في الهيئة الاتحادية للتنافسية والإحصاء ومنحها شرف الشراكة. أتمنى للاتحاد السويسري العزيز جداً على دولة الإمارات، والذي ستستضيف فعاليات الدورة الثالثة لمنتدى الأمم المتحدة للبيانات العالمي، أتمنى لكم كل التوفيق وكل النجاح، فأنتم ستبهرون العالم كما تقومون دائما بهذا الشأن. أجدد ترحيبي بكم في دولة الإمارات، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, and for the strong partnership. We have been partners in crime for 2 years. It is a long journey. I'm warning my friends and colleagues in Switzerland. We will be on the phone many times. There are lots of little and big problems to be solved in order to put an event like this one together. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, I know some of you have expected me in a yellow suit today, but unfortunately it's with the dry cleaner. The United Nations, we said it this morning, is 74 years old today. It is UN Day. And I must say, I have looked at our logo several times during our proceedings. And I must say, in the last 3 days, I was proud to work for the United Nations, because we were able to bring you all here together. This is something that my organization, the United Nations, does very well. And I think we have done this. And I was also looking at our logo, and we discussed it a lot a couple of years ago, but I think it's still wonderful because it's colorful and it's diverse and it's structured, it is stable and it's dynamic at the same time. So I think it really reflects what we have been living here in the last three days. To make this all happen, a lot of people have to work together, and I have to thank all of them. First and foremost, of course, the government of the UAE that has been so generous in its support to provide us this amazing experience here, these logistical arrangements, these incredible facilities, the exhibition, and most of all, of course, the hospitality that we have felt from our friends and our team in the FCSA. So thank you very, very much. This was really extraordinary. I thought a number of times about this. You have worked tirelessly, I know this, the Team Abdullah, as I call them. And you have been, we call this a forum, and a forum brings people together. And I think you have, in this region of the world, I think it's called a bazaar. And I think this is exactly the wonderful spirit that we felt in these last couple of days, the lightness of coming together and doing something together. And I was really impressed when I saw that you built a tent in the desert in order to accommodate our many wishes and needs for rooms and a meeting place. So this was really incredible. So thank you once again. I want to thank, of course, also the high-level group, the members of the high-level group that work with us throughout the year. And as I said, we'll start tomorrow with a journey towards Bern. I would like to thank the members of the program committee who have done a fantastic job of putting together sessions that were really incredible, invite speakers that were of a really high caliber. And I think this has been quite an experience, and I heard many of your voices that you were impressed and grateful for the inspiration that we got in the many sessions. So I would like to invite an applause for the program committee that worked so hard. I think we mentioned it before, we had when we asked openly for submissions and contributions to this forum, we had almost 500, and we had to put it down, focus it to 87 sessions, and I think we worked very hard on this here with the Secretariat and the Program Committee, but I think you really got the best of the best in terms of substance. And of course, I would like to thank all of the session organizers, the people who contributed to the various sessions, the moderators, the speakers. So if we had 87 sessions and at least 4, 5, 6 people responsible for each and every one, I think many of you in this room are good at math, so you can calculate how many people had to work together in order to get this done. So thank you to each and every one for making this happen. I also need to thank my team that I think they had to beat a new world record in functioning without any sleep. They were working really around the clock here before the event and once we were here. So without you, I could not do anything. We could not be doing anything. So I would really like to acknowledge and thank my own team from the UN Statistics Division for making this all happen. But last and most importantly, I wanted to thank all of you. We are talking a lot about interoperability, and a friend of mine once said, technical interoperability is no problem, it's the human interoperability that is challenging. And we have shown that we are quite capable for human interoperability. I want to thank everybody for coming, and not only coming, but coming with an open mind and an open heart, being ready to engage, to discuss, and bringing a lot of positive energy to this forum. And I think many of you have shown a great willingness to learn new languages, and I'm not talking only about languages like Arabic or English, but languages of other communities in order to better understand each other. So you are the United Nations World Data Forum, and I wanted to really thank you for making all of this happen. So Yeah, I know this is always the tricky part, because are you supposed to applaud yourself? But why not? So let's look forward. Let's carry the spirit of Cape Town and Dubai forward. It's always a little bit challenging when we have these big events, then afterwards you go like a little bit into a moment of, now we've done it, and then it's 2 years until the next one. And so I challenge all of you to create bridges between now and the next forum in 2 years. We don't want to just go home, forget about all this, or feel good about it, and then come back in 2 years only. I think all of us take energy, ideas, and inspiration home, and we can do that individually in the places where we work, or we can do it collectively. I always say imitation is the highest form of flattery. There is no intellectual property on the World Data Forum format. You can have data fora at the regional level, at the national level, and I invite at the sectoral level, I invite and challenge all of you to think creatively how we can continue and create a connection between everything that has happened here and everything that will happen in 2 years in Bern. So, Bern, tonight we will celebrate Dubai, and tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the high-level group will meet and we will start the journey towards the 3rd United Nations World Data Forum, and I hope I will see many, if not all of you there. So, see you all in Bern, and thank you very much.